Artificial intelligence is now showing up everywhere, including in the political arena. Mayoral candidate Anthony Furey's campaign team is admitting to the use of images generated by AI in campaign material. Well, questions were raised about a photo of a couple sitting at a table because the woman appears to have three hands. Well, other images include a police officer on a DTC platform, people occupying sidewalks on a downtown street, and tents set up in what appears to be a downtown park. Well, this raises questions about accuracy and transparency in politics. So what happens when it becomes harder to tell the difference between what's real and fake? Well, for more on this, we're joined live by Sinead Bovell. She is a futurist and founder of Way. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, when it comes to new technology, especially AI, I think there's equal amount of excitement about this revolutionary technology, but there's also an equal level of fear and concerns. When you see this kind of stuff playing out, what are some of your concerns about AI, especially when it comes to politics?
Right. So I think especially when it comes to politics in our political ecosystem, if voters start to become overwhelmed by AI-generated imagery, if voters are unable to tell the difference between what's real and what's fake, that could dramatically shape our democracy and the voting process. And what we saw in some of these images, and we've seen some in the election process that's going to be happening in the United States, a tendency towards fear-mongering and kind of shaping these more fearful dystopian narratives using AI-generated content. And I think that's a really, really challenging direction that we probably want to avoid.
And talk about some of the implications of that. I mean, what could really play out? Not only the fact that people's opinions could be swayed by something that is not necessarily real, but you know, even their physical responses to what they think they're seeing and what they think they're hearing.
Right. So, you know, how a democracy works is that we all have to agree to a shared story. And if we each have these unique, personalized, customized realities based on the AI-generated content we come across, that's going to be a very challenging society to live within. And if we feel like we don't actually have a handle on the truth, what's real, what's fake, it's not clearly depicted for us, that's a really, really challenging environment that can manifest in the physical world. And it's not just AI-generated imagery that we might see that might not be real. It's also people maybe researching the political process via things like chatbots, all sorts of ways that AI could contribute to more misinformation in our election process. And it's something I think we really need to get ahead of.
Well, I want to talk about that because EU lawmakers yesterday, they passed this landmark legislation for consumers. What do you think needs to happen here in Canada and even parts of the rest of the world?
Right. So in Canada, I think, especially in the context of politics, we need to decide what we want the boundaries of artificial intelligence to be. At the very bare minimum, I think it's a very low-hanging fruit to make sure AI-generated content is always marked and easily able to be seen that it's AI-generated. We don't need to add to deception in an environment, in a digital environment where we're already drowning in information. So I think that that's the very bare minimum. And then we might also want to decide, in the context of politics and elections in particular, maybe AI-generated content can only play a very small role, and we put some barriers around that. And then on the voter side of things, we do need to think a little bit more critically now when we come across information online. And I know it's already overwhelming, but we do need to do things like checking sources, making sure different news organizations that you trust are sharing the same stories. And this, you know, things just got a little bit more challenging for news organizations. AI fact-checking is a role we might see going forward.
AI is finding its way into so many different sectors and industries. Tell us how it's making its way into fashion.
Right. So there isn't an industry or a job that I can actually think of that won't be impacted by artificial intelligence. And one of those that might seem more surprising to people is fashion modeling. So you might have seen AI-generated images of Pope Francis a few weeks ago or a few months ago now in some fashionable jackets. You're also in some ways looking at the future of fashion modeling, where we use AI-generated fashion models and just kind of digitally apply the clothes that way. We saw a big announcement from Levi's a few months ago that they'll be using AI-generated fashion models. They got a little bit of pushback because it was in the guise of improving diversity, which has a lot of different questions and holes to that argument. But fashion modeling, acting, isn't really an industry that's going to go untouched by artificial intelligence.
And all this time, I just thought the Pope had some really cool style. I thought that jacket was pretty cool. But if people want to find out more information about kind of where this is all heading, what advice do you have? Where can they go find out some legitimate sources so they're not swayed by AI?
Yeah, so the first is that you do want to make sure that you have credible news organizations or journalists that you trust, and make sure that the information that you're following is right from them, not from just kind of maybe people on social media where things aren't verified. Triple check different sources. I do my best to keep up and to make sure that I share with my audience. So you're always welcome to send a question my way. But I think making sure you know who you're following, you know the sources you're reading from, and continuing to seek out credible media sources. It's really important.
Yeah, media sources and reporters are definitely important. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.